Well, hello. Welcome once again to Pale Blues and Beyond. Thank you for joining us. Beau Fletcher is an English blues, jazz, folk guitarist, composer, and TV presenter. He has also been involved in writing and performing activity songs for young children. We'll find out more about this in our upcoming conversation. Some of the musicians Beau has played and or recorded with include the Applejacks, Nigel Kennedy, Dave Swarbrick of Fairport Convention fame, John Etheridge, Andrew Cronshaw, Catherine Howe, and Ray Jackson of Lindisfarne. And Beau is still performing live today, both solo and as part of the Ric Sanders Trio and Silverblues. Well, welcome, Beau.
Hey, nice to be here, Greg. How you doing?
All right. Thanks for taking time out of your
Pleasure.
schedule and to be here. Lightning does strike twice, right? Look at your shirt there. So it did strike.
Yep.
Yep.
Yeah.
There we go.
Good old Grateful Dead T-shirt.
All right. All right.
Oh, once a Grateful Dead fan, always a Grateful Dead fan.
There you go. It never leaves.
I never actually saw them, but I'm a huge fan.
Yeah. And it never leaves you once you're part of that community, right? Well, take us back to the beginning. Talk about where you were born.
I was born, Greg, in the center of the cosmos, right? Which is Moseley in Birmingham.
Yeah.
And if anybody tells you different, that anywhere else in the center of the cosmos, they're lying, right?
Okay.
Moseley is it.
All right. It's the center.
Definitely. I played in Moseley last weekend with an old pal of mine, and there were a few people there. And I was saying, well, of course, I was born around here, and it turns out that about 12 people in the audience were also born in Moseley in the same place. There was a hospital called the Sorrento that was where anybody of my age, or plus or minus 10 or 15 years, was born at the Sorrento in those days.
Okay. Well, what about was that anywhere near Jeff Lynne territory?
Yeah. I think Jeff was over in Great Bar-ish area. I'm not entirely sure. I've met him a couple of times, but yeah. Oh, there's a lot of good people that come out of Birmingham.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
But the upsetting thing, that they've knocked it down. You know, this is my complaint. They've knocked it down, and they haven't put up a plaque saying I was born there.
Yeah.
I mean, that's disgusting.
What are they thinking?
What is the world coming to, Greg? I just
right. Well,
right. I'll stop whinging.
We'll talk about your some childhood memories.
Childhood memories.
Yeah.
Blimey. Childhood memories. Well, I mean, deep childhood. I remember the music that was on the radio. I remember the TV programs. I remember being really knocked out by because in England we didn't get an awful lot of blues, and it was only when Lonnie Donegan started doing skiffle that we started to hear a few things like some lead belly songs in this country. That kind of stuff just didn't get to us. But I also remember there was a great children's radio program called Uncle Mac's Children's Favorites, and he used to play the odd Big Bill Broomsey song on that, or the very occasional Muddy Waters song, or the old Americana thing. Like there was a version of the Big Rock Candy Mountain. It was a sanitized version by Burl Ives. It wasn't the original by Harry McClintock, but there was a sanitized version. So we used to get a little bit of Americana, but nothing like enough, you know, for my taste.
Yeah. Did you listen to Radio Luxembourg?
Yeah, oh yeah, but it was difficult because it used to fade.
That's what I heard.
Yeah, I mean, when I was about, I don't know, I guess 11 or so, I had a little crystal radio set, and you used to have to attach the aerial to the window frame because it was such a dreadful signal. But it was great when you got it, but it would come and go, so it was really, really frustrating. So you'd be listening to you know, whatever was up in the charts there, and it was something you really liked, and it would go.
Yeah.
Which was very
the reception was not.
Yeah.
Well, did you come from a musical family?
No, not really. I mean, I think Dad played trumpet in the army a bit, But no, although the family, my parents were both from down south. Mum's from London, dad's from Brighton, and they used to have sort of family sing songs. So we used to go back at Christmas and in the summer and meet with all the family. All lived in one street. I mean, when I was brought up, like there were like 7 or 8 uncles and aunties, and my grandmother all lived in the same street. So there were parties, and everybody would sing.
Yeah,
You
yeah.
know, Uncle Fred would hammer the piano, and it was very jolly. And all us kids, we had to do a song as well. You know,
Yeah.
yeah. I remember being quite nervous. I remember being quite. I was shy. I sort of got over that. But I remember singing a song, but hiding behind the settee because I didn't sing in
Right.
public. So I stood behind the settee and sang a song. But then I got applause, so I thought, oh, this is all right.
There you go.
So so I
You
kind
got
of
that
I came out of my shell.
positive,
Yeah,
positive reinforcement, always helps
yeah,
you
yeah.
out.
It was. It was.
Yeah, I heard stories about, the whole family gathering around the piano,
Oh
like
yeah, that really happened. That really happened. And of course, and I've got a memory of a lot of those old songs are still in there,
yeah, yeah,
still being in very good stead. I mean, jumping forward lots of years, I did some voluntary work at a psychiatric hospital in Birmingham, basically doing sing songs for the old dears.
yeah.
Who like their memories were shot. They didn't know what day of the week it was, but they knew all the old songs.
Right, right.
So all those old Cockney songs that my mum and dad used to sing, like Daisy Daisy and My Old Man Said Follow the Van and those things, I knew them.
Yeah, yeah.
So I was able to entertain the old chaps and the old ladies at the psychiatric hospital.
Isn't that something about the memory too? Like can't remember what happened 15
Yeah,
minutes ago or yesterday, but they can remember,
absolutely,
the songs.
absolutely. I mean, we had a hospital. Now I'm jumping forward a lot of years here, but we had a hospital band that were consisted of some members of staff and some patients. And there was one lady who had been a member of a female touring band, a big band, who actually they were quite. I mean, it was the Ivy Benson band. They were quite famous at the time. But she'd taken to the bottle, and and she didn't know what day of the week it was, what she'd have for lunch. But when she got the trumpet in her mouth,
Yeah,
she
yeah,
just she didn't need any music. She just stood there and hit it. She was great. I mean, a really, really great player, and it was all in there.
yeah, yeah.
So
You
yeah,
hear stories too about stutterers, people that stutter, and they can sing
yeah.
perfectly, but when
I
they try
used
to,
to stutter really badly when I was 11 or 12. I had I mean, I still stutter a bit, but I had a really bad stutter. But singing is not a problem. I think it's that you use a different part of your brain.
I think so. I think
Yeah,
you hit right the nail on the head right
yeah,
there. I
yeah.
think so. Well, do you recall one of your first singles or albums that either someone got for you or that you got?
Oh, yeah. The first album, Six of Mine, was a Chet Atkins compilation,
Okay.
and it was astonishing because uh, one track on it was Chet playing Yankee Doodle Dandy
Uh-huh.
and I Love to Be in Dixie at the same time.
Is it?
And I thought, how is this possible? Because I had no concept in that time, because I was playing guitar at that time, but I was strumming. I had the plectrum. I was a strummer. I didn't know about finger picking.
Uh-huh.
I didn't know you could play a bass line with your thumb and a tune with your fingers. And I thought, and it said on the album there was no other tracking. This is just, just one man playing this. And I thought the man is a god. I thought, how is that possible? And then years later, I saw an interview with Keith Richards from the Stones, and
Mhm.
Keith had the same experience with Robert Johnson. He thought that he couldn't believe that one person and couldn't comprehend how one person was doing all that stuff. Because if you didn't know about finger picking, it didn't occur to you that finger picking was a thing that
Yeah.
was actually feasible. And yeah, so this Chet Atkins album was astonishing. Anyway, I mean, Chet was great anyway.
I wonder if that's if that's on the on YouTube, that version, what you're talking about. I wonder if
Oh,
that's,
it's around. It'll be on Spotify.
yeah,
And
I'll
but I
look
mean,
into
yeah,
that.
he was masterful. And there are a few great tracks in there. I think what else did it? I think it had Lullaby of Birdland. It had Django's Castle. Well, it wasn't called Django. He called it Django's Castle. I think it was called Manoir de Mireille, the official one, official version.
Yeah.
But yeah, oh, it was astonishing stuff. And of course, I had the Beatles singles. I used to queue up at the record
Yeah.
shop on a Friday afternoon. When the Beatles had a new record out. with me six and eightpence clutched in my sweaty hand, oh, Blue Beatles, or the Stones, or the Kinks, or anybody, it was like that. That's what I was into.
Well, that's what. Yeah, I was just going to ask you about bands that you were into as a teen.
Oh yeah, it was at first. It was the pop stuff. It was Beatles, Stones, Kinks, the Who. It was the typical kind of stuff. Beach Boys.
Okay.
Always thought the Beach Boys were astonishing. And then when it got to like the British blues boom,
Mhm.
when I got to 15, then it was John Mayall's Blues Breakers and Cream, obviously. And I
We'll
saw
talk,
Cream. I saw
talk
Cream when I
about
was
that. Yeah, live.
well.
Yeah,
That was beyond impressive. I mean, that was the first proper gig that I ever went to, was Cream, and I was right at the front as well, and it was mighty. It was a wall of really, really, really exciting noise, and I was knocked out. I was dumbfounded. I've never been to such an impressive gig ever since. I mean, I've seen some great bands, but because it was the first one
right.
and it was them, and I had the album. I knew Fresh Cream inside out. I had the album. I think it was in between. They recorded Fresh Cream, and I think they hadn't started recording Disraeli Gears yet, although they may be doing a couple of tracks from that. And then afterwards, I went backstage afterwards because like a spotty guitar nerd, because I just got my first Strat. I just got my first decent guitar, and so I went backstage to see if I could say hello, And Eric was lovely. We had a chat, me and another couple of kids. And I was saying, oh, I've got a Fender Strat. And he said, oh, I love them. I use them all the time. Yeah, have a look at that if you like. Help yourself. And it was his Gibson SG, the
Yeah.
psychedelic painted one. And it was on the settee. And he said, have a go if you like. So he let me have a go on this SG. And I thought he was lovely because I was so impressed that, the mighty Eric Clapton took time to talk to youngsters about guitars. He's just a guitar enthusiast, just like we are.
Wow.
So, and that meant an awful lot to me. And obviously the guitar wasn't plugged in, but I had a little go on his SG, and it was great. It was great. So I vowed from that day forward, always take time to talk to kids about guitars.
Yeah.
Always.
Right.
You know.
That means so much to them too.
Oh, absolutely. It was great. It was great.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, because you feel when you see the band, then you meet the people, and you feel like you're absorbing some of the whatever that magic is,
That
the,
energy.
that magical thing that you can't put into words, that feeling for doing that thing that it's unexplainable, but you feel like you've absorbed a bit of it when you see guys like that and when you meet them,
A
you know.
lot of fans, feel like, well, they're idols, that I can't approach them. I can't, talk to these people, what, so many of them are very personable,
Yeah,
if you just get, they're humans just like
yeah,
everybody else. So,
yeah.
and they've got the same kind of experiences and you go through life, like everybody else. But yeah, there is something to be said about that, take time,
Yeah.
that's,
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Absolutely. And they're guitar nuts because he
yeah.
was, he fell in love with Robert Johnson when he got that first Robert Johnson, that King of the Delta Blues. He fell in love with that, and he played it and played it and played it and played it and played it, and until he began to get his head around it, and he managed to sort of to figure out how to do some of that stuff, and that's what we all did. Except I never figured out how to get my head around Chet Atkins, but that's not the point.
Well, you may be in the same boat with a lot of people on that
Oh
one.
no,
Yeah, so you could be.
it
Well,
was it was it was it was years later. I was at least 17 before I realised that there was a thing called finger picking. Somebody showed me. Somebody said, "Oh, it's this." And I went, "What?" Oh, and I remember the guy. He was a guy called Graham. I had a job briefly, very briefly, when I left school. Um, and this guy Graham showed me a finger picking pattern, and I
yeah,
went, "Ooh!" And that was ooh, that was a real good moment because then once you learn this one pattern, you can. Do you play guitar, Greg?
no,
Yourself? All right,
no,
okay. Well, one with finger picking, once you learn this one pattern, you can apply it to all the different chords, It's basically it's a pattern that there's a bass line going. So your thumb does a bass line, and your fingers do these little fill-in bits. And once you've learnt the main pattern, you can apply it to anything with variations. So that just opens stuff up.
Yeah.
And then
Whole
once you
new world.
do that, the
Whole new
next thing
world.
you learn, yeah, the next thing you learn is a thing called Angie, which is it's a Davy Graham tune.
Oh, I
That
love Davy Graham. Oh, I love
yeah,
Davy.
well, it's a Davy Graham tune that that everybody used to do. Like Bert Jansch used to do it, Paul
Yeah.
Simon did it, John Renmore did it, and that sort of that that does what they call educate your thumb
Okay.
because it's a bass line going dum 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 dum. So your thumb does that, and your fingers do the rest. So once you can do that, you've nailed it, and you can put that approach onto lots of different tunes.
Yeah, you can apply that. Well, you mentioned John Mayall as well.
Yeah.
Were you into Peter Green at all?
Yeah, yeah. I mean, but Birmingham. I never saw Peter Green with John Mayall. I only first time I saw John Mayall, he had Mick Taylor with him. But I saw Peter Green a lot. Birmingham was in during the blues boom. Birmingham was fantastic. There were several clubs. I mean, there was a club called Mothers in Ernington where I used to spend sort of Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. There was a club called the Metro. It had a blues night on a Thursday, so I'd be there Thursday. There was a club called Henry's Blues House where I go on a Wednesday. And all those bands, I mean, John Mayall's Blues Breakers, the original Fleetwood Mac, Savoy Brown Blues Band, Chicken Shack, early Jethro Tull, Alexis Corner, Free. Their first tour, they were supposed to be the support band for Alexis Corner. So he came on, did a couple of tunes, and said, right, I'm giving the rest of the night to these kids because they're great. And they were. They were fantastic. 10
See,
years
that's what
after.
10 years after Alan Lee. Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, you see, I'm envious of you guys over there because, like you said, there was something happening every
Oh,
night.
yeah. There was every night. I mean, obviously Birmingham is a fairly big. I'm sure it was happening as equally as much in London, if not more so. But I mean, it's like New York. You go to New York, you can go to something good every single night of the week. And Birmingham was pretty much like that, and it wasn't expensive. It wasn't.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
mean,
It was pretty affordable. Yeah. Back then.
I remember going to a festival at Woburn Abbey and seeing Taste,
Rory
Politics,
Gallagher.
John Mayall, Family, Donovan, Pentangle, Hendrix, Tyrannosaurus Rex, as T-Rex were then.
Yeah.
For some reason, the Gino Washington and the Ram Jam band, who didn't really fit with the rest. But I mean, and that was, I forget how much it was, but it was probably about £1. It was like, which and that probably doesn't relate to what we think of as money nowadays. But it was really, it wasn't expensive. And it was all those guys.
Right.
And
Can
it
you
was
imagine today, if they were alive, if a lot of those guys still here, well, how much it would cost? Yeah.
oh, yeah, they thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Phenomenal.
Yeah.
Wow. Yeah. Well, was your first band that you were involved with the Applejacks, or were you in?
No, oh, no, the first band. What was the first band? The proper band was called, it was some school friends. I think we had two, we were called the Demons. And then we were called something else, the Titans or something. It was all these four spotty kids, skinny, called themselves the Titans. I mean, it might have been, I can't forgot the name. The Demons was definitely, but whatever. And it was just playing. It was playing some Rolling Stones songs and the odd Beatles songs and some Kinks stuff and Spencer Davis Group. A few of those things, and that was sort of that lasted a few months, and then I joined a band called Morning Glory, which was a hippie band. That's when I decided that I had to have the hair frizzed out. I had hair in those days. Hair, I remember hair. Sorry, go nostalgic for a minute.
You still have hair, it's just
Yeah, no, it's just, and I because Eric Clapton had the freak out, so I had my hair freaked out. I had it must have looked stupid, but and then I joined the band and went to Germany, did all that because it was kind of compulsory because the Beatles had done it and everybody else had done it. It was what you did. You joined the band and you went to Germany and you played 6 hours a night for like almost no money. And
Yeah,
you know, but it made you a better band
yeah.
because
You
you
played
know.
Hamburg. You played Hamburg. Yeah.
No, no, nothing as glorious as Amber. No,
Okay.
we were way up north. It was by the North Sea. It was a town called Nordice,
Okay. Okay.
and it was grim and it was cold.
Right.
It was freezing, but it was an experience. You know, and but when when we came back, we were much better at it because I think we played sort of 6 hours a night at weekends and 5 hours a night during the week. You know,
Right.
maybe 10 minutes off every hour or something. So you played and played and played and played and played, and you might have been very good when you went over there, but you came back a much better band and a much better musician because
You
you had
honed
to.
your you
Yeah,
honed
yeah,
your
yeah.
chops. You
You honed your skills.
honed your chops over there.
Yeah,
Yeah.
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 And then that came back to England and played with a couple of other bands. Then eventually um, did an audition for a band called the Applejacks, who were a pop band. Initially, they were a pop band in the '60s, and they were famous because they had a girl bass player, Megan Davis, who's a really good, I mean, great bass player. And they were famous because they had hit singles, but also because they had a girl bass player, and there weren't many girls in bands in that time. A band called the Honeycombs had a girl drummer, Honey Lantry, and the Applejacks had Megan, and they had a few hits. Then the hits are kind of dried up. They'd gone abroad. They'd done the boats, and eventually sort of got bored with doing the boats, and came back. They were down to a three-piece, and they decided to reinvent themselves as a kind of, I guess you'd say, a folk rock, country rock kind of band. It was the time when Big Pink had come out,
Okay.
and everybody wanted to play in a band like the band because it was just the best thing since sliced bread, and and that record still holds up today. I mean, it's still, those
Yeah.
first two band albums, Big Pink and the Brown one, they're still absolutely tremendous records. I mean, they really really hold up. And so we wanted to do some of that. So we did that kind of stuff. So I auditioned for them and joined them. And we started doing original stuff. I joined at the same time as a guy called Bob Brady, a great singer and a great piano player. So we were able to do that kind of stuff. And that lasted for a little while. Then that split up pretty due to lack of work more than anything. And what happened then? I stayed in touch with those guys, and because of the band thing, because we liked that kind of thing, we decided, myself and Bob and Megan and another guitarist, Jimmy, decided that more than one of us should learn to play drums.
Okay.
So we could be like the band, because Levon played drums and mandolin and fiddle, and Richard Manuel played piano and drums, so they could swap around. So we thought, here's a cunning plan. Well, let's learn a few of us learn to play drums. But I was the only one that actually learned to play drums. I bought a set of drums, had them set up in my flat, which had no room for anything, let alone a drum kit. But we crammed the drum kit, and so I looked at the play, not very well. I mean, I wasn't, let's say I was enthusiastic.
Okay.
Crap. But I was keen. What I lacked in technique, I made up for in enthusiasm.
There you go.
Which has
There
probably
you
been a story of my life, actually. So
go. We'll give you an E for enthusiasm.
no
Yeah.
chops,
Right.
but he's happy.
All right.
And then and then they formed another band called Mongrel,
Okay.
which was what's the storyline of that? They had a band, and it was Megan and Bob, guitarist called Stuart Scott, great player, Tom Farnell on drums, and another great guitarist called Roger Hill on guitar.
Okay.
And they got a record deal, and that was all happening, and they recorded an album. And then let me get this right. Roger and Tom joined Fairport Convention for half an hour. Well, not very long anyway.
Temporary.
Yeah. So it left Mongrel without a drummer
Okay.
and actually a guitarist. So they were looking for drummers. So they said, "Look, would you just come to rehearsals and play with us just until we find a drummer?" And I said, "Yeah, great," because I got the kit, so I was quite happy to do that. And time went on, and they never found a drummer. So they said, "Look, we got some gigs. You want to do them?" I said, "Yeah." because I've got a habit of saying, yeah, I'll just say yes to it. Yeah, I'll do that. Yeah. You want a bass player? Yeah, yeah, I'll do that. You want a piano?
Well,
Yeah, I'll do that. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
you said yes to this interview, so there you go.
Yeah, there you go. You see, I've got this habit
I don't know what I'm getting into, but yeah.
no, you and me both, brother. So yeah, so I ended up doing a few gigs with them, and we did a bit of recording down at George Martin's Air Studios in London, because they'd done the album, but they were going to take a couple of tracks off the album and put in some new tracks on that represented the new band. I think that was the idea, and also I think there was a tour of the States was supposed to happen, and we had all the inoculations, but that didn't happen in the end. But yeah, so that band sort of trucked along for I don't know, a couple of years, I guess. I know it's hard to keep a grip on the timeline, but that was good fun. That was good fun.
Well, fill in the gap between that Mongrel and Brentford and the Nylons.
During that gap, I'd already met a fiddle player called Ric Sanders.
Okay.
I think when I was still playing, before I played with Mongrel, Rick and I had met, and we were doing some Stefan Grappelli and Django Reinhardt stuff.
Right.
With a couple of guys. So we had a little band together called, unlike you, the Fishnet Tights Swing Orchestra. Now we didn't wear them. I should put we didn't wear them. I was doing sort of gypsy jazz, basically, and I would play guitar with that, or if we had a guitarist, I played bass, depending on what's required. And Rick and I did that kind of stuff all during this on and off during this time anyway. So we've always sort of done work, the gypsy jazz stuff as a part of a band, or just the two of us working. Then I lived in Germany for a while. I had a German girlfriend, and I went to live in Berlin for a while and did folk clubs and stuff and army camps in Berlin. Then came back to England and continued doing the jazz thing with Rick. And then with some other old pals, a guy who I'd been playing guitar with, Dick Nelson, I've been playing guitar with since I was 14, when we had our first guitars. We always loved rock and roll. So we formed this rock and roll band, and that was Brentford and the Nylons.
All right.
And I was Vo Nylon, Dickie was Dick Nylon, the drummer was Jim Nylon, the piano player was Pete Nylon, and Brentford, it was my old pal John Mostyn, who was a great singer and an entrepreneur, who went on to great things. He went on into management. He managed the Beat, and he managed the Fine Young Cannibals, and several other people. And the Nylons they specialised in doing, and I should point out there were two bands called Brentford and the Nylons. And there was a band in Londden who got the same name, but that has caused some confusion, because I've had letters from people saying, "Oh, is this you?" I said, "No." but so I think legally we won the right to use the name, the Birmingham-based Nylons, and we did a bit of TV. We did a program called Revolver. But the Nylons specialised in doing rock and roll, but twice the speed of light.
Okay.
So we would get through, and I'm not exaggerating, we'd get through about 20 numbers in a half-hour set. I mean, the speed was mad. It was just mad. So it was Chuck Berry stuff and Buddy Holly stuff, but like faster than punks were playing punk. Because this was the days of punk. And the punks would say, "Yeah, we're playing Fast and Furious," and we go, "No, Sunshine, that's not Fast and Furious. This is Fast and Furious." Oh, in Pogo as well, just taking the mickey out of the punks, really, because I wasn't really impressed by punk. That's not fair. Let's face it, back in there, the Stones were punk. The Pretty Things were as punk as the punks. The Kings were punk. I mean, you really got me. We used to do that.
Yeah, they were the Who. Yeah, all those.
Oh God, yeah. So I was never very impressed by the whole punk thing. So we used to basically outplay the punks, and there were battles of the bands and stuff, and
Yeah, your cover of the Stones' 19th Nervous Breakdown. Yeah.
Oh yeah, yeah. We did. Yeah, there's that. That's on YouTube.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's on YouTube. Then we did 19th Nervous Breakdown. That's Revolver and Come On Everybody. And I think we got both numbers in a 3-minute slot. Am I right?
Yeah.
It's like, yeah. And we don't cut the song short. It's the whole. It's the
It's
whole
the
song.
whole thing. Yeah.
It's the whole night. The whole in about 3 minutes.
You're right. You're
Yeah.
right.
Yeah.
Well, you started out heavily influenced by the blues, but you began to gravitate to folk music, didn't you?
Yeah. I think that's just that's becoming a solo musician. You know, you can play, and folk being related to blues as well. Because I mean, I used to listen to a lot of Bert Jansch, who was a phenomenal player, but he was as much folk as he was blues. I mean, Bert was a real crossbreed, as was Davy Graham, as was John Remborn,
Yeah.
and a lot of those guys. And then you start listening. I mean, you listen to Big Bill Broonzy. It's folk, it's blues, but it's folk as well. So there's that whole sort of, there's that whole grey area. Is it blues or is it folk? Who cares? Does it matter? I don't think so. It's just stuff. So yeah. So but I mean, I used to play in folk clubs.
Yeah.
I used to play folk in folk clubs, and I used to do blues in folk clubs. So yeah, just kept on going, and then I guess at some point I must have got into. I think when I got married and had kids, that's when I got into writing children's songs.
Well, talk a little bit about English Air.
That was right. English Air. That was
Good.
my wife, Rach.
Yeah.
And we've been divorced about 20 years now, but we still play together now and again. On oboe, and that was me writing. How can I say? Almost English pastoral kind of stuff, sort of almost like a guitar version of the kind of vibe, the Vaughan Williams English kind of vibe, but just with guitar and oboe, and adding a few other musicians to it as well.
The oboe is one of my all-time favorite instruments.
Yeah.
I love the sound of the oboe.
Yeah.
It's so melancholy, but it's so beautiful.
Yeah. And we used to go and we used to do folk clubs, and so yes, I guess that was quite folky.
Yeah.
But also there was a little of a slightly classical side to it as well, because obviously the oboe is a classical instrument too. So yeah, I've forgotten that. Yeah, we made a couple of albums.
Yeah.
We made a couple of albums, and in fact, you're nudging my memory here. I think on the albums we've got Andy Cronshaw.
Oh, you love his stuff.
The mighty Cron,
Mighty Cron.
whose stuff I still totally adore. And you listen to Cron's stuff now, it holds up. All his stuff from back then, The Great Dark Water, all those things. In fact, Rach and I and Rick and a bass player called John Davey played in Cron's band for a while, and we did a few gigs together.
I was going to ask you about.
And that was tremendous, because there's Cron is his own. He's almost created his own genre.
Yes.
And the sounds he makes are otherworldly, ethereal, but folky and weird. But they groove as well. I mean, he's a totally one-off. There is only one Andy Cronshaw. I mean, he's an absolute one-off, and it holds up.
Yeah.
I mean, it's like a lot of albums that you liked back in the day. You listen to them now, and you can, blimey, did I really like that? Oh dear, whoops. You listen to Cron stuff, still beautiful.
It is. It's timeless. Yeah, and it's a lovely Joan.
Oh yeah,
and the cuckoo.
Yeah,
a couple that I just really adore. Yeah, from him. We'll go back and talk about the children's involved in the performing and activity for the children.
Yeah,
young children. Yeah,
that was because I've been in there's been another. I missed a band out. I was in a band called Tuxedo Bay.
Okay.
With Loz Kingsley, who I still play with, and a great vocalist, Ruth Davis. And we were doing folk clubs and a lot of TV at the time. And that was hang on, let me think. That was after the nylons.
Yeah.
That was kind of after the nylons, and at the same time as Rach and I were beginning to do our thing, and that was doing mostly songs from the Great American Songbook.
Okay. Okay.
So that was 30s and 40s material, and that was doing so that kind of jazz stuff. We used to do it in folk clubs, and it used to go down very well. So I was doing that, but it did involve a lot of traveling. We're traveling all over the country. And when Rach and I had our first son, Joe, who was born in 1985, I decided that it was time to maybe not be traveling up and down the motorway so often, because I kind of wanted to be at home. I wanted to be at home in the mornings when he got up, and I wanted to be at home at bedtimes as well, because that's the trouble with being a musician. That whole lifestyle doesn't really work if you're trying to raise a family as well. So the kids end up being parented by just one parent, and I didn't really want to do that. So I gave up playing with Tuxedo Bay and started to get some work doing children's stuff, so I could be at home. So Rach and I started doing work in schools, just doing kids songs, and eventually sort of got tired of doing Postman Pat and Twinkle Twinkle Little Star and all those. So I started writing them. I started writing kids songs. So I had a recording studio at home. So I started writing them, and we started doing the songs that I'd written, which were action songs. So we then, for a few years there, when the boys were little, we made a career out of working in schools, which kind of stood us in very good stead. So we could drop the boys off at school or nursery or whatever, go and do a gig during the day, and be home in time to pick them up from school. So that actually worked very well. So it meant we could both work, we could both earn a living, and we still had the family life, which was kind of good.
You found the perfect situation for
you. Yeah. And then gradually, as the boys got older, I started doing a bit more grown up stuff as well. And I guess that's the way. It's interesting talking to you because you don't really. I haven't really thought about my whole life timeline.
Right. Well, that's what I hear about this. Is doing these is like the jarring the memory a little bit.
It is, yeah.
And
then you realise this whole thing is I forgot. I played so and so for a whole while there, and I completely forgot that. I bet you get phone calls after the interview saying, "Oh, Greg, listen, I totally forgot."
Right. It's fun. It's fun for you. It's fun for the viewer. It's fun for me. Fun for, everybody. Gets to kind of relive this, and then, and for the new viewers, especially, it's like, wow, okay, this is all fascinating. We'll talk about on that same subject. Talk about Spaceman Sid.
Spaceman Sid. Well, that was one of the songs that I wrote.
Okay.
And it was that stood us in good stead, that song, because it was the actions. It had a countdown. You go 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, and you leap in the air for the blast off. And of course, we're talking about largely preschool kids here, so people used to be astonished that you got these like 2-year-olds can count backwards from 5. And the nursery teacher would go, where's he learn that from? you don't get to. So it was good, and there was this whole idea that not all kids learn in the same way. Like some kids learn from watching somebody else do it. Some kids learn from being told by somebody else to do this, and some kids learn by actually doing it. I mean, we're all the same. We all learn from all three methods, but some of us learn more from seeing it. Some learn more from doing it, and some learn more from sort of hearing the instructions. So because we were demonstrating the actions, telling them the actions, and then doing the actions to the songs, so we'd rehearse a song before we actually did it. So we were covering all three of those bases, which educationally, purely by luck, I was told was actually a very good way of teaching music. So we made quite a thing, and for several years we made a really good living out of doing that.
Was that primarily in the schools, or did you do any?
We did a few summer things as well. So, but it was still mostly based in schools. Like we did a few art centres and did some summer things.
Like I know.
Libraries. Funny enough, I'm doing a library. Believe it or not, this week.
Oh, okay.
I should be wheeling Spaceman Sid out again this week. I don't do much kid stuff nowadays.
Uh-huh,
I was
uh-huh.
a- I was asked to do one a few months ago, and it went really well. So I'm doing it again this Thursday. Just so I shall wheel Spaceman Sid out again, and occasionally I get emails from people saying, "Oh, I remember Spaceman Sid when I was a kid, and now my kids love it."
Yeah.
So which is great.
Well, see that's the sign of something that's
It's a sign of
meaningful.
something.
Something, yeah. That has lasted that long, and there's something to be said about, definitely. Well,
I was sent a video only yesterday of two little kids singing one of the songs, a song called Monster Bite.
yeah.
You've got to have a little bit of monster in your bite. And this lady sent me a video of her two grandchildren singing his monster. I don't know if I can show you on
Yeah,
here.
yeah. That's I like to see that.
Hang on, let me see. Where was it now? How did you send it? It might have been on WhatsApp. Right, I don't know if this is going to work. If I try.
You've got to have a little bit of monster in your
Just
life.
like there you go.
Yeah, gotta have a little bit of monster. You've gotta have a little bit of monster. You've gotta have a little bit of monster in your life.
That's great.
It's great, isn't it? It's great.
Yeah, it is. Oh, that's great.
And that's like, that's a song that I wrote in, I don't know, 1987,
Yeah.
I guess.
See, see, your reputation precedes you. Your legend lives on. Right, right.
And
Yeah,
it should be in good stead because in about, let me get the timeline right again. In about 1990, I want to say five or maybe seven, I'd done a few TV theme tunes because I always had a little recording studio at home, and I'd done a couple of TV themes. And one of the guys that I worked with, a guy called Richard Morse, said to me one day, "How many songs have you got? Kids songs?" And I said, "Oh, about 30." And he said, "Could you write 30 more?" And I said, "Yes," because I do, saying yes. And I ended up presenting a kids show on Channel 5 when Channel 5 first started in this country. Now, Channel 5 was not a massive deal at the time. It was I know in the States you've got a zillion channels, but we hadn't.
right.
There was BBC One, BBC Two, ATV, and Channel 4, and that was it in this country. So a new channel starting up was a reasonably big deal. Except that not many people could get it at the time, but obviously that's improved since. And they wanted a preschool kids show, and they wanted a lady to make things, a make and do. They wanted somebody who could juggle and do magic and those kind of things, and they wanted a musician, and they wanted a puppet. And so they hired three of us. I got the gig as a musician. My pals Gabriel Bradshaw and Jason Maverick got the other gigs, and we did this thing called Have a Kazoo, which launched when Channel 5 launched. I want to say 1997-ish. I'm not entirely sure of the timeline there. And it was a preschool show that went out 3 times a week, early in the morning, very early in the morning. And it was the three of us plus this robot, this toy, who lived in a windmill, and the windmill was called Have a Kazoo. And and it was basically it was our day-to-day life, and they filmed us doing stuff and being silly, and I had a song in every program, and that was enormously good fun. So basically, I used the songs I'd already written, and I wrote another 30 or 40 more.
Well,
Um,
what it reminds me of is a guy who just passed away, Pee Wee Herman,
oh
uh,
yeah,
Pee Wee's Playhouse.
oh
Kind of,
really?
yeah, of that. Did you ever used to watch that? Those shows?
No, I'm not sure
Oh,
we got it over here.
you look it up on YouTube. They're
Well,
they're hilarious. So trying to make them like for children, they're for adults, but children,
Yeah,
supposedly for children.
that's the trick. If you can make adults like a children's program,
Right,
that,
right,
that's
right.
that's and apparently Have a Kazoo, it did hit that. It did hit the thing where parents liked it as well.
Yeah.
Because after a while, they kind of dumbed it down and turned it more into a preschool program, and it lost the viewing figures apparently. Um, but the first year, it was a bit sort of sillier, if you like, and a bit more unscripted, a bit more off the wall, and it got very good viewing figures. For Channel 5, which
Yeah.
was not saying a lot because Channel 5 wasn't it was a small channel. But that was. In fact, funny enough, I did an interview
Uh-huh.
with Gabrielle and Jason and a guy in England who's an enthusiast on old children's programs, and so we met. I haven't seen it for years, and so we did an interview, not dissimilar to this, talking about the old days, and that was good fun. It was good to see them. So that was all right. And then I went on to I did a few other kids shows. I did a thing called the Jellykins with a pal of mine, Dave Lowe, who's a great TV writer. Are you familiar with a comedian called Rick Mail?
Yes, I was going to ask you about him.
Yeah,
That is the comedian, the young ones.
young ones and Bottom. Absolutely. I mean, genius. Lovely. He's dead now. Well, dead currently. Um,
Currently,
currently,
he hasn't risen. He hasn't come back yet.
yeah. We don't know. Yeah. And he was great. He was. I mean, and it was quite a gentle program. It was a computer animated thing, originally called Jellybees, but they had to change it to Jellykins because they decided in their infinite wisdom they looked too much like Jelly Babies, and they thought they were advertising Jelly Babies, so they had to change it to Jellykins. Change all the heads on them. Imagine that. They filmed. They got the whole thing all animated. And all the songs said Jellybees and Jellybees, we are the Jellybees, and they've got to change it to Jellykins because they can't use the name Jellybees. The advertising standards people decided, can't use that. Sorry, mate. Yeah, I mean, yeah. But Rick had a bad accident. He'd had an accident on a quad bike, and nearly killed him. And so he was on some heavy medication. So this was his first gig after the accident, and all he was doing, he was narrating the story. So he wasn't in shot. He was narrating the story behind these little sort of jelly baby type creatures, who the Jellykins were. Well, they make rainbows. That's what they do. That's their job. So anytime it rains and there's a rainbow, that's because the Jellykins have been at work at the rainbow machine, and they make all the rainbows. And now you know where rainbows come from.
Right.
You're now.
I might have seen that before.
Oh, it was gorgeous.
YouTube.
It was lovely, and Rick was great. He was great to work with. We did an album of songs, some of which he sang, and he was really good. But it was quite, like I say, it was quite gentle for him because he hadn't got to be Rick from Bottom. He hadn't got to be that loud character. He could be a bit more gentle. So it was a nice for him. It was a nice way back into work. And he was just tremendous, just the nicest guy. I mean, and funny, and just tremendous to work with. Really great.
Yeah, I've heard that too. He was never the same after the accident.
No.
After that, we'll talk. I want to hear a little bit about Dave Swarbrick.
Swarb.
Yeah, Swarb. I talked with Kevin Dempsey. Did you see my interview with?
Oh,
Kevin?
no, yeah, I saw. Yeah. Kev's a great player. Love Kev.
He worked with him in a couple of incarnations with Dave.
He's great. Kev is a great guitar player. That style, that's all that popping and snapping is great. He's a great player. Because I've got a new band called Silverblues with Tom Leary and Ric Sanders and Ray Jackson from Lindisfarne, and Tommy has done a lot of work with Kev.
Okay.
So it's very incestuous.
That's right.
That whole folk scene. Sport. Kev's worked a lot with Swarb, and Swarb and Kev were in a band called Whippersnapper with Chris Leslie.
Yeah, exactly.
And I worked with Swarb, and I obviously worked with Rick.
Yeah,
there's a Fairport connection there. So yeah, it's very incestuous.
Yeah. Well, I thought it was very interesting about how the nuppaper reported his death days before, while he was still alive,
And
before
he
he
says,
passed.
not the first time I died in Coventry.
Right.
Yeah,
Yeah, that's the perfect line. Perfect line.
yeah. And then on his website, he would sell copies of the obituary.
Yeah.
You could buy a signed copy of Swarbrick's
Exactly.
obituary.
You know.
But a genius fiddle player. I mean, I don't know if you gigs with him, with another little band we had for a while, which is me and my ex-Rach, a tabla player, Dave, and another fiddle player called Mike Burnham and Swarb. We did a few gigs together. That was cool. Didn't last very long. The band was called Time and Again, but it was a nice little band. But Swarb was suffering with emphysema quite badly during this time. It's before he had the operation, and so if we did a song that he sang, he'd have to have a rest afterwards. So he'd do one, then we'd do a song, we'd do a tune without him, so he could get his breath.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because it was getting bad. But then he got the double lung transplant, which is great because I think he's with Kev when he had a respiratory arrest. They were abroad somewhere, weren't they?
Yes, he was. Yeah, he had a personal. Yeah. Yeah. He was there. He was right there.
Yeah. But yeah, because eventually, because the trouble with the lung transplant, it's not that kills you. I think it's correct me if I'm wrong. I think it's the drugs you've got to take for the rest of your life that actually end up killing you. Is that the way it goes?
That sounds about right. That sounds about right. Yeah.
But I mean, genius fiddle player. But I did some kids songs with him as well. When I don't have a kazoo, towards the end of it, they decided that I should do some of the songs that I had for older children, and they're going to do a video of that. So we get a band together, and they filmed. I recorded some of these songs, and they filmed us at a zoo down near Marlborough somewhere. And the band was myself, Rach, Ian Palmer on drums, Dane Cranmer on bass, and Swarm on fiddle, miming to these songs. But when we recorded them in a studio, he was a pal of mine, Paul White's studio up here in Malvern, and I'd play him the track. He'd have a listen to it. He'd have a cigarette. He'd sit by the studio door with a ciggy on. Because always, every picture you ever saw of Swarb, every album cover is a fag on.
Yeah.
Surrounded by smoke.
Yeah.
Every single one. So he'd stand by the door. He'd have a ciggy. He'd listen to it once, then he'd play it right all the way through, and then maybe there'd be the odd glitch. So we take 2 takes just to cover ourselves. But they were mostly all really, really good. And on the final recordings, sometimes I used 2 fiddles because they were both good takes. So I'd sort of, I had 2 fiddles or 2 rhythm fiddles going along. He was absolutely a phenomenal ear, absolutely phenomenal. Although he was deaf, because his hearing was bad as well. I mean, not only was his breathing bad, his hearing wasn't good, but obviously he could hear himself. But sometimes he'd chunter. You'd hear him go, so he'd be playing along. But those tracks, I don't think I've got some very good. It's never seen the light of day, I don't think. I think I released a couple of gentle ones on a kids album that I did at one point. But I've got a good 6 or 7 songs with Swarb playing on for slightly older kids that have never even been released.
Well, talk a little bit about working with violinist Nigel Kennedy.
Nigel, I was lucky. I've done good with fiddlers, haven't I?
Yes, yeah.
I've been blessed by fiddlers.
Yes, you have.
And Rick, I play with Rick, Chris Leslie, Swarb, and Nigel. So every let's face it. I've done all right fiddle player wise. And Nigel lived in Malvern. He was living in Malvern at the time, and we used the same pub.
Yeah.
A pub of West Malvern called the Brewers Arms, and so I sort of met him there. And there are various occasions where we'd have have a little jam, and a couple of gigs came up that he wanted a guitarist for, and it was his main guitarist was John Etheridge.
Okay.
Once again, very incestuous because I played in a band with Rick.
Right.
I played in a band called Second Vision, like sort of a prog jazz band, in about blimey, I lost. I want to say 78, 79. Made one album called First Steps, which if you haven't heard, you should check out. Second Vision, First Steps. Yeah, with some other mates of ours, a guy called Mickey Barker, who also played on the English Air albums. So it's all.
Yeah.
And Ed was the guitarist in Nigel's band, and Rory McFarlane on bass. And there was a chance, apparently, there was a gig, and there's a chance that Eth wasn't going to make it. He was coming back from the States. So there was a bit of a panic on. So I was like a second guitarist, but there was a chance that I might have to be the only guitarist that night. So I was going, oh, please, Eth, get back as it was your first gig. So that was a bit scary. Yeah, and it was followed by a tour. Which was, and it was great. I mean, playing with Nigel is a big deal because that boy can play fiddle. We were doing a couple of Django and Stefan things because obviously Stefan was a mentor to Nigel. We were doing some Hendrix stuff. We were doing and there's some classical stuff as well. We had a piano player called John Lenahan. So we'd segue from like Fritz Kreisler's Hymn to the Sun, which is just Nigel and John, the piano player, like a classical piece, and then we'd segue into Hendrix's Third Stone from the Sun and back. So we were mic'd up, but then for the classical stuff, Nigel would step away from the mic, and it would just be fiddle and piano, and then we'd segue into lean into the mics again, and segue into Third Stone from the Sun, and we did a couple of Miles tunes as well. So it was. Yeah, it was great, and there was. But I tell you what, more playing went on backstage and in restaurants afterwards, and at the pub than went on stage because
right?
we just were always playing.
Yeah.
You know, you do a sound check. The sound check would go on and on. You'd play in the dressing room. You go to a restaurant. There's a local restaurant called Planters. We used to go afterwards because the people there used to look after Nigel's dog, Deadly. So we could go back to Planters afterwards, and then we play till 3 or 4 in the morning.
Yeah.
So there was like it was just always playing. So much more playing was done out of hours or after hours, whatever you want to call it, and in the pub. You know, locked in till 3 o'clock. I mean, there was one night. Donovan came along to one of the gigs in Birmingham Symphony Hall, and I think Nigel used to go out with one of Don's daughters, so that's how they knew each other. And Don came along, and we did Hurdy Gurdy Man as the encore, which is great. But then we all headed back to the Brewers and sat up till 3 in the morning. Me and Nigel and Donovan just playing all of Don's songs, and he's got millions of them, and they're all great. I mean, everyone a winner. I mean, that guy has written so many great songs. You know, Catch the Wind, Colours, Hurdy Gurdy Man, Jennifer Juniper, First Teresa Mountain, on and on. You know, Mellow Yellow, Goo, on and on. Yeah, song after song after song. I mean, we just sat there happy as Larry. Me and I just play, you know, and the, you know, all the punters locked in the pub. The pub should have closed hours ago, so they just locked the doors. You know,
Right.
there were licensing laws in those days. You know, but it was great. It was a great experience. You know? So yeah, fabulous. Love him.
I'm trying to touch on all of these that I mentioned in the intro a little bit, at least, you know, mention and talk a little bit about David Lowe's Touch and Go.
Yeah, Dave. It was Dave that was the composer that I mentioned that I wrote the Jellykins stuff with. And David had a big hit with a song called "Would You." That was a hit. Was it a hit in the States as well? I'm not sure. And the band was called. It was kind of a fabricate. It wasn't a real band. It was just they made up a band name called Touch and Go. And we did a couple of gigs, but they weren't real gigs. They were sort of like appearances under the name of Touch and Go. And I was on a few tracks on the album, and I think I co-wrote one. So yeah, so I officially count myself as a member of Touch and Go, but I wasn't on the big hit. And then,
speaking of, I was going to say, when you guys played all those after hours, you know, wouldn't it have been nice to have a recording, you know, recorder going?
Oh, that would have been magic, especially the night with Don. That would have been,
right.
absolutely magical. Yeah, and David another couple of singles out, and I think I was on the other singles, but they couldn't get arrested with them. Yeah. So yeah, I'm a member of Touch and Go as well. Yeah.
And then wanted to mention folk singer songwriter Catherine
Oh,
Howe.
Kate, she's wonderful. I still see her now and again. She doesn't play now. She's kind of retired. But Catherine is what I call a proper songwriter. I mean, she is a real. I mean, I've written a few songs and I've written a couple that are all right. But she writes real songs of it's a standard quality. I mean, she won an Ivor Novello Award, which is a big deal in this country, for a song called Harry. And it's just one of the it's one of the world's great songs. It stands up there with all those standards. It's absolutely gorgeous, and she's got several like that. You know, that was a big hit. Although it didn't do an awful lot in the charts. It won the award, but it didn't do an awful lot chart wise. And she kind of retired for a while. She got married, had a daughter, retired for a while, and was beginning to surface again. And I think there was a tour in the offing that didn't come together. But she wanted looking for a guitar player, and I was local, and she knew of me because she brought her daughter when her daughter was maybe about 4 along to one of my kids' shows. So she knew of me, and I didn't know her. I didn't know she was in the audience, you know. So she knew of me from way back when. So she knew I played, and she knew I wrote. So we did an album together called English Tale, which is I love it. I mean, I'm really pleased with the album. It was totally uncluttered. We did it live. I had not even a proper recording studio. Excuse me a sec. Hey, Joe, you're right, love. I'm just doing an interview with a chap from Texas called Greg. My son just come back.
Carry on. Right. Yeah.
He's a drummer.
Okay.
He plays in a band called Esoteric, who are like they're louder than God. I mean,
ask that.
they're really good at what they do, and it's a style called doom metal or funeral metal.
Okay.
And
well, that's good to plug him. Yeah, you can do that.
Oh yeah. I mean, of what they do, they're really. I find it a bit loud. But that's because I'm like, and now I never thought I'd hear myself say that, because we know back in the day. Oh God, the phone's going. Hang on.
Speaking of loud.
Oh, it's Rick. I'll get that later. Yeah. They're really good at the doom metal, but it's very loud. I mean, I saw Cream back in the day. I saw the Who, so I thought that was loud, but it's that's loud.
It doesn't hold a light to that.
No.
Let me ask: Did he start playing early on when he was young? Drums.
He started.
He
must have been about 12 or 13.
Did you try to dissuade him to
no.
a less loud?
Well, he was fortunate. that I played drums, because I had a set of drums in the attic.
There you go. Right.
So because he used to play when he was a kid, he had piano lessons and didn't practice, and then he was having trumpet lessons and he wouldn't practice. I'm telling you all this. And then he was in this youth jazz orchestra in Birmingham called My Joe. He was in like the youngsters band, and basically they joined the young band, and if they get good enough, they join the middle band, then they join the big boys band, doing big band jazz, and it's a tremendous organisation. And every interval he'd be on the drum kit.
Okay.
And I could never go into practice the trumpet. He'd be on the drum kit in the interval. So one day he said, I like drums. So I had this drum kit in the attic. So we hugged it down, got it down from the attic, and he wouldn't stop. He did the work. We found a good teacher, so he learned to read drum music. He did all the rudiments, did all the practice pad, paradiddles, hour after hour after hour, getting it right. And he's phenomenal. I mean, he's great. I mean, he's a world-class drummer. But he wouldn't be a trumpet player.
I was going to say.
Yeah.
Well, if your hearing hasn't gone already, it will, right?
Yeah.
Listening to the drums, listening.
So I always think it was lucky that I played drums, because I had a drum kit lying around.
Yeah, there you go. So easy segue for him. Well, we'll talk about one more, Ray Jackson.
Oh, Ray. Well, Rick, who just called. Rick and Ray and Tom Leary and I, Tommy who's played with Kev Dempsey, and Tom joined Lindisfarne a few years ago. And Lindisfarne were a Geordie band from Newcastle. In case you don't know what Geordies are. And they had some big hits in the 70s. They had an album called Fog on the Tyne that I think got in the charts in 1971 or thereabouts, and stayed in the charts for about a year.
It was very good.
Had a couple of big singles, one called Meet Me on the Corner, one called and so Lindisfarne, and I guess they were kind of folk rock as well, and they were a big deal. And Ray's done this and that since then. But because we know Tommy, who I've played with Rick, and we've done stuff together, and Tommy was in a band with Ray because Tom's a Geordie. Tom said, "Oh, we should get together with Ray." So we got together with Ray around at Rick's, and we thought this is magic. So we formed a band, and we did a couple of gigs, and we did our first sort of proper one a couple of weeks ago at a festival down in south of England, in the New Forest Folk Festival, and it was tremendous. We if I say so myself, we stormed it, and it was great. So the future beckons for Silverblues, and we we call it Silverblues because we're all old, we've got silver hair, and we like the blues. So we're doing a couple of Lindisfarne things. We're doing Meet Me on the Corner. We're doing a couple of Fairportish kind of things, and we're doing a lot of blues as well.
Yeah.
So it's great. And Ray sings brilliantly, plays harmonica, blues harmonica, is a genius at it, and plays mandolin. Tommy plays fiddle, slide guitar, and mandolin, and Rick plays fiddle. So, and I sort of mix it up with 12-string guitar and 6-string guitar. So yeah, it's a really good band. So that's the project for now in the future. Besides duo stuff with Rick.
Yeah, the future looks bright for you. Okay, well, good.
Yeah.
Good.
I mean, keep going. You just keep going.
You did return to your blues roots. With Blues and Beats.
Yeah. Yes.
And I like your cover in the treatment of Tomorrow Never.
Well, that happened because of lockdown.
Yeah. Right.
During lockdown, I didn't have anything to do, obviously, so I decided to do a Facebook show.
Yeah.
I thought, because I wasn't earning any money, and you got to pay the bills. So I did a Facebook show, and I had like a PayPal, a virtual tip jar, so people could I didn't sort of say how much you got to pay, but people would pay to watch, which is great. And I did that weekly. I mean, it took a while to get it together because technology-wise, I mean, I had to make myself a kind of an idiot list of things to do, because I've got the laptop running Ableton Live, I've got the desktop with lyrics, I've got the desktop with Facebook, so I can see myself so I can see what's going on. I've got an iPad controlling loops and stuff and controlling the software. So it was a bit of a handful. Because I was some of the songs I had loops, I had little grooves going as well, like on Blues and Beats, and I had to make myself an idiot list. Like, for example, when your phone's been in your pocket all week, you got to wipe the screen.
Right.
You're using your phone as a camera, so you wipe the screen, idiot. Turn it off so you don't get phone calls. Also, here's a good idea, Greg. What you do, you make sure the screen doesn't go blank after 2 minutes.
Okay, yeah, right.
So gradually, week by week, I overcame all these. I had my idiot list, and also you can say make sure you wipe your screen and make sure your phone make sure you don't get phone calls, and stuff like Facebook was very fussy about the bit rate that you were putting up there. It only liked pictures of a certain frame rate or whatever you call it. Too big, it couldn't cope. Too small, it looked crap.
Right.
So you had to get all that right. But in the end, I sort of got reasonable quality going at the pipe, and I did that for about 15 months. Did a show a week, and every week I do a trailer. And for the trailer, I'd use some loops. And those songs that are on the album Blues and Beats are basically some of the trailers that I did that I sort of just tweaked slightly and tarted them up a bit as well. So I thought, yeah, I'll put out an album of that stuff. So it's not typical of what I do normally, but I kind of enjoyed it.
Yeah.
Doing the grooves.
Yeah, I imagine. I mean, that was kind of neat to kind of what am I trying to say? Bridge the gap, that generation gap, with the beats and the blues.
Yeah.
To kind of bring it all together.
Yeah. It was fun.
Well, talk about any upcoming gigs, shows.
Yeah, there's a few coming up with Silverblues. I mean, for some reason, Rick and I, as a duo, are busier this year than we've ever been because we don't do an awful lot. Because I mean, obviously, it's quite busy with Fairport because Fairport roll on and on and on. Which is great. He's quite busy with that, but we got more duo stuff in this year than we ever had, which is kind of satisfying. We got a little tour later in the year as well. Silverblues beckons. There's more gigs with Silverblues in the book. I carry on doing solo stuff. There's another couple of guys, my old pal Loz Kingsley, that I was with Tuxedo Bay with. He and I are doing some duo stuff. Got a guy who lives in Malvern, an American guy called Tyler Massey. He and I do duo stuff. So all in all, yeah, I'm keeping busy. Keeping on. Yeah,
You are definitely.
And I figure it's better than working.
There you go. And you're not slowing down. Yeah, there you go.
God, I know. Well, Rick and I laugh about this. We say, we can't die. We're booked.
Right.
I've stolen that line. It's from George Burns.
Okay.
Comedian, the guy with the cigar, and I think when he was 99, he said, can't die. I'm booked.
Yeah, exactly. Wow.
Yeah,
Well.
Keep on keeping on.
Yeah, there you go. Well, anything else you'd like to add?
I think I'm sure when this conversation is over, I should say, I forgot to say about so and so.
Hey, you're just like I am. You're just.
There's bound to be somebody or something that I really should have mentioned.
Or
there's going to be somebody that I play with that I've forgotten, and they're going to be offended.
Yeah. You're not gonna hear from them for a while.
No, you didn't mention me.
Right. It happens. So, all right. Well, I appreciate it. You again taking time and doing this, and I've really enjoyed visiting with you, Bo.
I've enjoyed it.
Yeah.
I don't know how accurate it's been timeline wise. I think
that was my question too. And I hope I interjected these at the right time.
Yeah. Well, I think without your interjections, I think I would have missed out a whole lot of stuff.
All right. Well, that's what the internet's for.
Yeah, I guess.
And mostly it's accurate, right? So, mostly. We can hold them to most things.
I reckon.
All righty. Well, thank you.
A pleasure. A pleasure and a joy.
And I will send you the link once I have it.
Great. I look forward to that.
And you can post it and let everybody know.
Great.
Say hello to your family, and
I will.
All the best to you. All right.
All right. Take care, Greg. Nice to see you. Bye, mate. Bye.
Bye.